Institutions, but we also saved institutions.
Actually, in 1982, bipartisan congressional legislation deregulated the savings and loan industry. From 1986 to 1995, due to rampant fraud, bad management, and inept government supervision, 1/2 of all savings and loans failed, costing taxpayers more than $125 billion. A more accurate description of what happened would be to say that deregulation created the perfect environment for bank management to commit fraud, for lobbyists to obstruct regulators, and for banks to make riskier loans. The savings and loan crisis produced the largest collapse of U.S. financial institutions since the Great Depression. Although these crashes were concentrated in Texas and California, where regulations were very loose, they threatened the soundness of the financial system at the time. Our representatives obeyed the influence peddlers of the failed institutions, and the American taxpayers bailed them out. The drivers of the financial system abandoned the controls at the first sign of trouble, evading responsibility for their part in the ensuing predicament. The financial authorities then appear to blaze to the rescue, riding the customary white horse, intent on saving the hapless heroine from impending doom. We seem to forget each narrow escape as we manage to leap to safety. Over the last 30 years, from the S&Ls to the 1987 market crash, to the Mexican, Asian, and Russian crises of the 90s, we have replayed the same scene over and over again. Public memory is short and blurred, but institutional memory is long. The lesson for the Wall Street banks, the hedge funds, and the government-sponsored entities like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is that their credit is always good on the casino floor. When they bet and win, they keep their gains. When they bet and lose, the American taxpayer will cover their losses. Each cycle emboldens them to take on more risk and leverage, increasing the instability and fragility of our financial system while enriching top corporate executives and the beneficiaries of their political oblation.
I'm going to keep a pretty close watch on these guys.
It's George Bush's philosophy. It's Dick Cheney's philosophy. It's a philosophy that says that we should give more and more to those with the most and hope that prosperity trickles down. It's a philosophy that says even the most common sense regulations are unnecessary and unwise. We shouldn't meddle in the marketplace. It's a philosophy that lets Washington lobbyists shred consumer protections to distort our economy so it works for the special interests.
The economic team of insiders, assembled by the Obama administration, helped to shape the policies that led to this moment. Prior to the 1998 collapse of private hedge fund long-term capital management, Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, Treasury Secretary Robert Rubin, and Deputy Treasury Secretary Larry Summers praised the benefits of derivatives and warned against regulating them even slightly. Behind the scenes, these men strenuously obstructed regulators' attempts to impose transparency, reduce leverage, and coordinate control over the use of derivatives.
Let's forget the lessons of the past. Let's believe the 1920s didn't happen. Let's not worry about Glass-Steagall. In fact, let's repeal Glass-Steagall. Let's decide that we can merge once again or fuse together banking enterprises and more risky enterprises, and we can go down the road just happy as clams and everything will be just great. And of course it won't. I mentioned hedge funds. Talk about risk. How about derivatives? About 5 years ago, and incidentally, those who vote for this bill will remember this at some point in the future, when we have the next catastrophic event that goes with the risks and derivatives. Fortune magazine wrote an article, "The Risks That Won't Go Away." Financial derivatives are tightening their grip on the world economy, and no one knows how to control them.
The start of the holidays, 1999, and the financial industry gets a gift. A new law allowing banks to merge with investment and insurance companies. The big backer, Texas Senator Phil Gramm, who says it promotes competition. Never mind that it also overturns a Depression-era law forbidding such economic giants, because their failure could crash the economy. The new law's many supporters figure times have changed. Marcus Mabry of the New York Times.
Bill Clinton supported that legislation, and so did the vast majority of the Senate. It passed something like 95-0, and a huge majority in the House of Representatives. So it was a bipartisan legislation.
One Christmas later, and Graham is at it again. This time he succeeds in reducing government regulation on those big financial firms. And with those two measures, some economic analysts say he built the pillars of the current financial collapse.
After spending hundreds of millions of dollars over 2 decades of lobbying and help from friends in high places, Wall Street had finally succeeded in eliminating the Depression-era regulation enacted to counter the corruption, insider trading, and financial manipulation that resulted in thousands of bank failures 75 years ago. 3 months after leaving his position as Treasury Secretary in July 1999, Rubin went through the revolving door to become a director and committee chair at Citigroup, one of the firms that depended upon Rubin's push for deregulation. Rubin's compensation for his almost decade of service at Citigroup would exceed $150 million, not including stock options. He would have had to work as Secretary of the Treasury for 1,000 years to make that kind of income. In 2003, without admitting or denying the allegations, 10 Wall Street firms, including Citigroup, had agreed to pay $1.4 billion to settle charges that they knowingly manipulated investors into purchasing worthless shares. Citigroup, after becoming the last member of an all-star team of Wall Street banks to settle Enron-related accounting crimes, eventually agreed to pay almost half of the $3.5 billion agreement.
This Congress must step up to its constitutional responsibilities as a deliberative body to craft that right deal, not an insider trade. Actually, this bill is the wrong medicine. It concentrates financial power even more in the hands of Wall Street's mega banks and its buddies at the U.S. Treasury. It bails out their bad behavior with no reform to prevent further abuse, and it ignores Main Street's real housing challenges.
In 2000, Henry Paulson, as the CEO of Goldman Sachs, began to push for the SEC to allow investment banks to use greater leverage. In 2004, the SEC relented. In 2006, Paulson sold his $480 million stake in Goldman Sachs to avoid possible accusations of conflict of interest when he accepted the position as Treasury Secretary, making him the wealthiest member of the Bush cabinet. His government salary would be the equivalent of what he earned in just 2 days at Goldman Sachs the prior year. In 2008, a decade after the LTCM bailout, Goldman Sachs became one of the largest beneficiaries of Paulson's $700 billion bailout. The aristocracy of wealth stride through the revolving door, either coming out smelling like roses or ready to hand out bouquets. In 2006, 90% of American households earned less than $104,000 per year. simply by getting elected. A senator or representative automatically joins an elite club. Their annual salary of $174,000, not including benefits or cost of living adjustments, puts them in the top 5% of all income earners. Rank-and-file members of the House and Senate earn more than 95% of American households. The fastest way to get rich in this country is to get elected to Congress. With candidates for the House spending an average of $1.1 million and Senate candidates spending an average of $6.5 million for their $174,000 a year jobs, we know that we do not have their allegiance.